Hello, BookTube, and hello, Swifties. Welcome. This is your safe space. Here, we do both. Some Taylor Swift news. Today, the demo track for Better Man, which is appearing on Red Taylor's version as a From the Vault track, was leaked, posted. I heard it on TikTok this morning, and it got me so excited, and I had the sudden inspiration for this video to recommend books based on your favorite Taylor Swift album. My original idea was to do a book for like every song on Red to prepare for that, and as you can see, I kind of am trying to embody the Red energy. Then I decided that that would be a lot. That's a lot of songs, and I'm not sure I even have read enough books to effectively do that. I feel like some of them would be a major stretch just because I'm trying to recommend something that I have both read and liked. If you guys like this concept, maybe I could make this a series that I do albums from other artists or a more general album video. So, okay, let's crack into it. So starting with the debut, self-titled, Taylor Swift, a classic. I right off the bat was struggling with this one. I wanted to definitely choose something that was like a southern coming of age type of story. So I'll tell you that I think I'm gonna go with Secret Life of Bees by Sue Monk Kidd. These don't follow entirely the same themes. You can probably spot the immediate similarities. This is about a girl who's growing up. The debut is a lot of very childhood, very not fitting in type of songs. I also thought that some other books that might work for this were Because of Winn-Dixie or like Tuck Everlasting, kind of in the same setting. But I do think Secret Life of Bees works out a little better, even though it deals with some heavier topics, because like I said, it deals so much with that trait of being an outsider, and I also think the romance in Secret Life of Bees is a little bit more compelling than the other books, and of course, Taylor loves a good love song. So for Fearless, Taylor's version, of course. I also struggled with this. I worry that some of these recommendations are going to be a little bit basic, but hopefully some of them you also haven't heard before. That being said, I'm going to recommend Little Fires Everywhere by Celeste Ng. When I think of Fearless, I do kind of think of growing up in suburbia. I think this book fit really well with this album because there's so many perspectives. It's also all kind of so separated from the rest of the world, right? When I was reading Little Fires Everywhere, I was like, wow, this little community has no idea what's going on around it. And sometimes Fearless starts to feel that way too, a little bit escapist. Like whenever I listen to Love Story, I feel like I'm being transported away. For Speak Now, I picked Hang the Moon by Alexandra Bellefleur. This is a rom-com. You might guess that this was kind of originally inspired by the color palette similarity, and then the more I started to think about it, the more I felt like it really worked. The romance is friends to lovers and kind of a childhood friends to lovers, and it just immediately gave me the vibes of Mine. You know, that opening song defines Speak Now so much for me. This is also a really funny book, and I feel like Speak Now has its really clever and witty little moments. There's like Mean and Speak Now itself and Better Than Revenge. So I just feel like it has the same energy, and then also that still really young sweetness of having known someone for a long time and then kind of slowly falling in love and having a long history together. Yeah, I think that this works really well. And also I just recommend this whole series. Probably talked about it before, but there's Count Your Lucky Stars and Written in the Stars are also part of this. I think Count Your Lucky Stars comes out early next year, but the characters are so rich and sweet and they just warm my heart, so highly recommend. So for Red, again, kind of basic, but I'm going to recommend Normal People by Sally Rooney. This is just the classic heartbreak book for the classic heartbreak album, but it does feel like Red always does feel like a miscommunication to me, and it might just be because it switches back and forth between these really high emotional highs and low emotional lows. I think Normal People does that really well too, where it almost gives you hope that everything's gonna work out and it's a holy ground moment, and then suddenly you're sitting right in the middle of sad, beautiful, tragic, wondering how we got here. I think they also have in common that they're very autumn books. If any book is going to remind you of All Too Well, I definitely think it's Normal People. So this is my pick. I'm not taking any criticism. 1989, we have Daisy Jones and the Six by Taylor Jenkins Reid. Both this album and this book have this like newly formed kind of confidence, and I think what really does it for me here is the romance element, because 1989 has these amazing love songs, even though it also has these amazing self-love songs. Like, Daisy Jones really does embody the kind of shake it off and blank space, like, I don't care what people say about me anymore. I always think about that scene in the beginning of the book where she's like refusing to record an album because she didn't get to write the songs, and so I love that energy. But also the romance is kind of that, it is kind of like a style wildest dreams moment where it's so wrong it's right, but then you feel like everything kind of works out where it's supposed to at the end with Clean, where it's a moving forward, it's a moving on. The emotionality of this worked really well, along with the theme of being vintage and rocky and a little bit badass. And speaking of badass, we have the album, Reputation. This one was really hard because I don't read any like action adventure books that might fit well with the aesthetic of this album. So I went a little bit different and kind of went with the energy of it and picked Where'd You Go, Bernadette by Maria Semple. So similar to like Taylor's own story in writing Reputation, Where'd You Go, Bernadette is the story of this woman who's like really misinterpreted by her peers and the public and her friends. She quite literally has to disappear to kind of go live out her truth. But she ends up emerging stronger than ever. A lot of the love elements for Reputation don't apply to this. I know that it's not just an anger album, it's not just a revenge album, it's not just a badass album, it's also about finding someone who really cares about you. I think Bernadette kind of comes into that love a little bit too, although not necessarily as much in a romantic sense. So that would be my one caveat, but I still think that the theming and just the storyline of these fit really well together. Next up we have Lover, another amazing one. For this, like, of course it's gonna have to be a romance, but then I was kind of thinking about some of these songs on Lover that are more introspective, like The Archer, and I thought that a good choice for this might be The Kiss Quotient by Helen Hong, because I think that Stella's character really reminds me of The Archer. Like with Lover, those introspective moments are pretty low emotional lows, but the highs are Paper Rings and Cruel Summer. These really fun, upbeat songs. Some of those cute little romance scenes that come in the middle of The Kiss Quotient really remind me of Lover and really make me happy, make me feel like I'm bouncing around to I Think He Knows, which is one of my favorite Taylor Swift songs. Okay, so for folklore, I'm going to recommend The Most Fun We Ever Had by Claire Lombardo. This is a book that I really enjoyed. It's a slower paced book. It tells a really intricate story and there's a lot of overlapping, and it's kind of a family saga. And so I thought this fit really well kind of with the story Taylor weaves, the Betty, James, and August story, and also with kind of the reflections on her own life and her own mental health and her family. Although this is a family saga, of course, within that are a lot of interpersonal relationships, some marital relationships, sibling dynamics, and this is just like a book that really reflects over a long period of time, which I think that folklore, as its name implies, is telling a huge, intricate story. I also think that the song, specifically This Is Me Trying, works really well in the context of this book. I think that almost every character in this book could relate to it in some sense. I do recommend this. I'm probably not going to reread it, at least anytime soon, because it is really slow. The audiobook was long, and it took me a long time to get through. But if that's the kind of story you like, then I definitely recommend it. Okay, Evermore, I'll tell you that I'm recommending Call Me By Your Name by Andre Osman, simply again because this is such a classical kind of book, and I feel like there are a lot of different little stories that are told in Call Me By Your Name, and I can think of each scene really as its own distinct moment. And I think of that a lot with Evermore too, how it can go from songs like Cowboy Like Me to Ivy to Champagne Problems, and it all still feels like it fits together. I think that some people have criticism about how well it works as an album as a whole, or maybe that's folklore. I'm not really sure. I think they both work really well. So that was kind of why I picked Call Me By Your Name, because they are in several different places and they're in several different moments in the relationship. And then again, kind of like folklore, you also get some like family dynamic and some vulnerability from Taylor. However, I kind of felt compelled to recommend a novel because that's what the rest of these have been. I would also compare Evermore to What We Talk About When We Talk About Love by Raymond Carver, which is my favorite collection of short stories. Like I said, I really think of Evermore as a bunch of small, distinct little stories, and some of them are longer than others, and some of them are, a little bit more interpretive than others. I think that Ivy is one you really have to dig into, whereas something like Champagne Problems is pretty straightforward. I think you get that a lot with Carver's writing too. Some of his stories are 2 pages long, more like flash fiction. The messaging is pretty clear, and some of them are, 50 pages and it's just a long conversation between 2 people and you're not really sure what's happening until the very end. Okay, well guys, thank you so much for watching. I really had fun with this video analyzing, and I hope that you liked it too. Yeah, let me know what you thought. Let me know if you want me to do similar videos like this in the future. This is a format that I think is really fun. Otherwise, like this video, subscribe to my channel for more. We'll talk to you next time. Bye!